He's led hockey through an era of historic success.
This is a game and a business of a game that has grown dramatically.
And he's faced some of the toughest calls any sports executive has had to make.
Shutting down a sports league for an entire season is not anybody's idea of a good time, but it was something we had to do.
On the eve of the NHL season, Commissioner Gary Bettman sits down for frank talk about the league's promise and its problems.
How far am I willing to go in this conversation? I'm not discussing collective bargaining.
Let's hit the ice with Sportfolio. Hi, I'm Rick Horrow, and welcome to Sportfolio, the show that takes you beyond the scoreboard, behind the scenes, and inside the numbers with the key players in the business of sports. Our focus tonight's on hockey, and our lineup of guests include Philadelphia Flyers CEO Peter Luukko and Hall of Fame goaltender Mike Richter. But let's start with the view from the very top, straight from Commissioner Gary Bettman. He's the first commissioner in NHL's history. His predecessors were merely presidents. His impact on hockey as a business and a sport have been profound. Bettman led the league's expansion into Sun Belt markets. He negotiated 2 labor deals and 5 television contracts. He approved innovations like the overtime shootout and the Winter Classic. No surprise that going into the season, he's bullish on the state of the game.
We're coming off perhaps the best season in our history by any measurable metrics, whether or not it's attendance, TV ratings, fan engagement on NHL.com, sponsor activation and support. Obviously, we have a couple of franchise issues, but 'twas ever thus, and we'll deal with those. When it comes to the state of the game, particularly the game on the ice, and that's why everything else is strong, we've had a great season.
Let's talk about market stability issues. Do you regret leaving Atlanta?
We never like to leave any market. We didn't like to leave Winnipeg when we left the first time, but you have no choice sometimes. The move of the Thrashers to Winnipeg, obviously we're sorry and we're unhappy for our fans in Atlanta, but the response in Winnipeg has been nothing short of phenomenal. Selling out season tickets on a multi-year commitment in a matter of days. Being in Winnipeg and seeing the excitement of the fans, thrilled to have a team back, and the franchise is off to a spectacular start.
Will the Coyotes be in Phoenix 2 years from now?
I certainly hope so. We and the city of Glendale have been working extraordinarily hard to make it a reality. Those that preceded us did an extraordinary job in trying to kill the franchise, and we're trying to stay loyal to our fans, as we try to do everywhere, and make it work.
Are you comfortable with the current gap separating the haves and the have-not franchises?
Well, we have a system that's worked pretty well, not perfectly, that has given us extraordinarily good competitive balance, perhaps the best we or any sports league has ever seen. And the combination of the hard salary cap and revenue sharing has improved our situation dramatically over where we were 6 years ago.
The NHL's national TV revenues have been up and down under Bettman. At one point, the agreement with NBC was a straight revenue share with no upfront rights fees. But this spring, Bettman arranged a 10-year deal with Comcast and NBC that'll bring the league some $2 billion and a ton of visibility.
The new deal, putting aside the money, which is for us an all-time record and recognizes in some material ways the value of our programming. More importantly is the platforms, and we'll be able to connect with our fans in ways we've never done before, and I think it's going to continue to propel our growth as a major television property.
Started 1993, 18 years ago, feels like only yesterday, $400 million in revenue. Did you ever think you'd get to $3 billion?
Only when they had the straitjacket on me. I've always believed in this game. We have the most passionate, committed, connected fans in all of sports. I think, and I'm obviously biased, that we have the best sport, the best athletes, the best people associated with the game, and most importantly, the best fans. And I've always believed that this game could grow to unprecedented heights.
That's the big picture from Commissioner Bettman. But how does the league look from the owner's box? Let's bring in Peter Luukko, president and CEO of Comcast Spectacor, which owns the Philadelphia Flyers. Hey, so Peter, full disclosure, you're a Comcast employee, but this new deal, is it a great step forward for hockey in the U.S.?
Oh, I really think it is. You know, combining Comcast and NBC, now you'll have the regular season program of Versus, soon to be renamed. Then obviously the national deal with NBC to be showcased nationally, and you know, the Winter Classic, et cetera. It couldn't be better from hockey, not only from being a Comcast Spectacor employee, but also I think, you know, working the team every day.
And vertical integration, as they say in the media trade, it'll be huge. On-ice parity, though, has really never been stronger in the NHL, but the revenue gap between the league's top and bottom markets, it continues to be wide. Is this a problem that can be solved to everyone's benefit, and are there some good ideas on the table?
Well, you know, I think it's an issue in all of sports. You know, I mean, obviously you're going to have different size markets, from 1 million to 10, 12 million people in a market. So I think if you take any league and take the top 3 to 5 teams and the bottom 3 to 5 teams, and then you look at what's there in the middle, I don't think the disparity is all that great. And then you're also talking about getting revenue sharing. So, you know, you don't want to see teams not doing well on the bottom end, but at the same time, you know, they'll have their opportunity through drafts and good management to build a team, to grow those crowds. So I think it's going to be a fact of sports forever. I think, as you mentioned, Rick, the parity has been incredible. You know, you've got 7th and 8th seeds going to the finals. We were one of them. In the playoffs, you've got the number 12 team right in the playoff hunt, right to the very end, the last game. So, you know, I think it's a fact of life in sports, and I think every market and every owner has to work to make sure that they get those revenues up.
Well, and you're looking at Peter Luco, enlightened management, mustache or not. Good look, by the way. Flyers attendance over the last 15 years, 99% of capacity since opening the Wells Fargo Center. And Philly's a great market for hockey, obviously, but Atlanta, Phoenix, Long Island, even Jersey struggled. And as Gary Bettman did say in the interview, you hate to see franchises move, but is that kind of tough love something that may have to happen sometime?
Well, yeah, I think so. I think, you know, as a league and as a partner in the league, I think we have to give every market its opportunity. And I think Gary's done a tremendous job doing that. And let the market try and mature. But at the end of the day, if it doesn't, that's a decision that an owner will have to make in conjunction with the league.
Yeah, and it's a possible future issue that everybody's going to be talking about. Peter, thanks for the insights. Please stay around. We want your take on a lot of issues, the week's top headlines. Hang around for a couple minutes. Is that okay?
All right, great. I'm with you.
When we return, more from Gary Bettman on the hot-button topic of head injuries. An expert analysis from one of the headiest players in the history of the game. Mike Richter was a Hall of Fame goaltender, a Stanley Cup winner, and an outspoken advocate for player safety. Is brutality bad for the NHL's business? We'll get Mike Richter's candid thoughts next. Welcome back to Sportfolio. One of the most serious concerns facing the NHL this season, player safety. And the league's biggest star, Sidney Crosby, hasn't played since January due to a concussion. And this summer, 3 players known for physical play and fighting died suddenly, and at least one of those deaths has been ruled a suicide. I asked Gary Bettman how the league is approaching this very complex and difficult issue.
Well, first of all, in the cases of suicide, we've used it as an opportunity with the Players Association to review all of the programs that we have and the assets that we afford anybody in the NHL family who has a problem. I think people who don't like fighting in the game and never liked it are painting with a very broad brush. Every circumstance is different, and based on the young age of professional athletes, not just in this sport, but in all sports, the notion of dealing with depression and the risks of suicide shouldn't be overlooked by anyone. In terms of the common thread, I think it's been a bit exaggerated. I don't think there's a documented illness of enforcer's disease.
How do you feel about protecting your superstars, and how important is that to the game?
Well, we want to protect all of our players. We've named Brendan Shanahan Senior Vice President of Player Safety. We're the first sports league to have such a position. He's going to be responsible for not only supplemental discipline, but looking at what can be done to make the playing environment safer. We hired an engineering firm over the summer, so we've changed the glass. All buildings are going to have plexiglass. The turnbuckles are going to be curved. We're looking at equipment with the Players Association to see if we can be protective but less weapon-like. We want all of our players to be on the ice and playing, and we want injuries to be at an absolute minimum. Having said that, this is a very physical game. Most physical perhaps in all the sports, and injuries are a fact of life. What we want to do is try and minimize injuries to the extent we can, particularly when it relates to concussions and head injuries.
We're joined now by Mike Richter, former New York Rangers goaltender, who retired in 2003, partially due to a skull fracture and numerous concussions. You had a brain, you wanted to save it. Mike, thank you very much for being here.
I'm just happy to be here after that introduction.
Yeah, well, let's get on with it. Fighting is one of those inherent traditions in hockey, but is it important to continue for the business of the sport?
Well, it's a balancing act that all sports have to have. I mean, hockey by nature is a bit of a violent sport. There's physical contact, and the players now are bigger, stronger than ever. They have better equipment, but the brain is still as vulnerable as it's ever been. We have better methods of determining concussions and what multiple concussions can do. So I think this is a balancing act, and I do think the league's been pretty good about it. But it's something that they can't just say there isn't an issue here. You have to get right to it and really get down to the bottom of it.
Death of 3 players under 30 this summer. Gary Bettman says we shouldn't read too much into it, and there's really no enforcer's disease. Do you agree?
I do agree. I think these are different situations. I'm not sure they are all suicides. These are tragic deaths. But you have to understand, with the 750 people playing in the NHL, there's going to be all kinds of things, unfortunately, like this. And I think it's a little bit early to be just having this blanket statement over it. But look, I mean, this is the health of our league, and it's the health of the players. It's the future of the game. So it's something that I'm sure the league is taking seriously. And as tragic as it is, it's not always as preventable as we'd like to think it is.
You played all those years in the NHL. What's your take? Ban fighting, ban hits to the head, ban both, ban neither?
Well, the hits to the head have to be taken out. There's no question about it. I mean, it's always been illegal, but rules aren't always enforced. And I think the conversation is starting to happen. The conversation with fighting comes up a fair amount of times and then dies down. It's part of the reason a lot of the people sit in the stands, and it's part of the reason a lot of people won't come to the game. So that's just, again, a balance you have to figure out. But the hits to the head, there's no reason to have it in there. Ken Dryden, I think, said it very well. I mean, this is to hurt somebody. It's just too dangerous, too much downside. You've got to take them out.
And, of course, you got to play the game to understand the perspective of the game, and a lot of stuff went on in that goal crease in front of you, I'm sure. Now you got Brendan Shanahan, who's one of yours, who is enforcing the rules, knows what it takes. Will the game be safer because of that?
I think one thing Brendan Shanahan brings is real credibility. Coley Campbell did a great job in this role for years, and the NHL, I think, has done a great job realizing this is an important thing. But what Shanahan's saying is this isn't about punishing people. This is about preserving the health of the players, and that's what it's about. So it's a very different outlook and a smart one.
Well, one quick other off topic a little bit. I understand you're working with arenas to finance arena retrofits. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, we have a project finance fund, and the reason we're doing this is there's a need out there. We're basically taking a pile of capital and saying these arenas should be as high performance and as efficient as the athletes that use them. And we've got all kinds of things here in New York City with Mike Bloomberg's doing a lot with Plan NYC, trying to get efficiency for buildings. I think New York City has 70% of the greenhouse gases come out of the built environment. These buildings are dinosaurs. We've got to bring them up to speed.
Mike Richter, good luck with everything you're doing. Thank you very much for coming and seeing us on Sportfolio.
Love being here. Thanks.
More from Gary Bettman still to come on Sportfolio. He steps lightly over the third rail of hockey politics, the upcoming labor negotiations. Stay with us. And here's this week's Sportfolio Stumper. What was the last team to win the Stanley Cup while boasting the NHL's largest payroll? The answer coming up. The last team to lead the NHL in player payroll and also bring home a Stanley Cup, the Detroit Red Wings. They turned that trick in 2002. And here to give us bottom line on this week's top sports headlines, it's the best team money can buy. Two guys who know their business and their sports. Peter Luko's back with us from Philly, the president of Comcast Spectacor, the chairman of Global Spectrum, which operates 107 venues all over the planet. We also welcome Bloomberg TV's Adam Johnson, co-host of Street Smart, weekdays at 3 p.m. Hey, Adam, thanks for stopping by.
Great to be here, Rick.
I'll throw you guys a headline, and you give me the bottom line on what it means for sports business. Let's start with college football. The Big 12 has a plan to keep the conference together, a completely equal split of first-tier and second-tier TV revenue between all teams in exchange for a 6-year commitment to stay in the league. Adam, bottom line, will this keep teams from bolting?
Yeah, status quo. Why rock the boat? Look what happened yesterday. Goldman Sachs lowers Viacom because ad revenues are falling. All right, we're going into potentially another recession, so why would you rock the boat and risk the money train that's been keeping this thing alive? Status quo, Rick.
Peter, your thought?
Sharing is the best way to keep a league together. If everybody's sharing in the pot, everybody's working together, I think it breeds success. So I think it's a very creative and smart plan.
Borrowed from the Green Bay Packers in the NFL in the 60s. They wouldn't be there if it wasn't for that kind of revenue sharing at that level, guys. All right, next, headline from baseball. Red Sox part ways with Terry Francona after a September swoon. They let GM Theo Epstein walk. Peter, bottom line, does management have to clean house after a disaster like that? My Boston accent.
Well, I am a chowderhead, originally and a big Red Sox fan, but I think, first of all, you know, only the team and the organization knows what's going on in a clubhouse. I know my experience has been you got to be very careful when things don't go right, and all of us have been around a time when the situation isn't right, is you try and make the most, you know, the best decision for the long term of that organization. You try not make an emotional decision just after you got beat or lost in a tough way. So, you know, I'm sure there was a situation going on that they had to make change, but you've always got to be careful not to make the emotional decision. Make the best decision for the long term of your club and its fans.
Spoken like a true chatterhead. And by the way, they're not letting Theo walk yet, but they're letting him talk to people. Adam, what's your take?
Well, look, I'm a New York guy, all right? So if Boston's having problems, in other words, it's broke, I say don't fix it. Let it stay broke, all right? That may be good for my Yankees. But, you know, I mean, look, Peter's absolutely right. You got to think about the long-term health of the club. And, you know, professional sports, it's a tough business. And if a guy's not performing, there's a deep bench there, and they got to do the right thing to help the franchise long-term.
Sophisticated and territorial analysis from Bloomberg's best, Adam Johnson. Next, a headline from women's golf. Lexi Thompson won an LPGA tournament, but she's 16 years old, so she had to apply for a tour card. Tour agreed to waive that rule. You have to be 18, saying she's proved she can handle it. Bottom line, Adam, LPGA commissioner for the day, do you set that precedent?
Yeah, of course you do. Look, I'm surprised she's that old. I mean, Nadia Comaneci won a gold medal when she was, what, 11 or 12? 16 years old. They're starting to win tournaments. You know, given another 5, 10 years, Rick, you got to think that there's going to be a 14-year-old out there who's going to steal the show.
Peter, your call?
Let the best players play. You know, that's what the fans, the sponsors, that's what everybody wants to see. And if this young lady is an exception to that rule and can play, and if she's proven she can play, I say let her play.
Well, bottom line is she's better than all of us combined on the golf course. I agree. Let her play. Final issue, let's go to basketball. NBA lockout drags on. Kobe Bryant negotiating seriously with Virtus Bologna on a 10-day contract to play in Italy. Hey, Peter, bottom line, does this add any pressure to the CBA negotiations, or does it just add euros to Kobe's bank account?
I'll go with the euros. You know, there's so much at stake here for, you know, the hundreds of players in the league and the owners and the fans and everything. This is a bit of a sideshow. It has zero effect whatsoever on what's going on. And, you know, let's just hope everybody can get to the issues and get this thing done.
Adam, self-professed international maven, what's your take?
Look, you know, I mean, he's a prized American asset. Keep him here, keep him happy. You know, it's like we have all these people from other countries coming into this country. They get a great education. What do? We boot them out and they go elsewhere. You know, you got to keep your prized assets here at home.
Not a bad take from our guys, Peter Luco, Bloomberg's Adam Johnson. Adam hosts Street Smart weekdays at 3. Thanks for moonlighting with us, and back to hockey when we return, and a topic that's bound to send chills down the spine of devoted fans. Gary Bettman's got to hammer out a new CBA with a players' union led by a labor legend. Does he fear Donald Fear? Stay right here. We've got plenty left on Sportfolio. Next week on our show, a golf legend. As a player and a businessman, and at age 70, Jack Nicklaus is still a major force in the sport. He'll talk to us about his career, his projects, and the state of the game, only on Sportfolio. For all the positive and progressive things Gary Bettman has done as NHL commissioner, for many, he'll always be the man who did the unthinkable. allowing the game to shut down for a year when owners and players couldn't agree on a labor deal. Well, the NHL CBA expires a year from now, and nobody anticipates negotiations will be easy.
The last deal signed in 2006. The economy is a little different than it was before. You've demonstrated the ability to shut down a season if necessary. How far are you willing to go this year, and should the fans be worried?
How far am I willing to go in this conversation? I'm not discussing collective bargaining. We have a system that has improved things and given us great competitive balance. We have another season to go. This summer, I don't know, all of a sudden people seem to fixate on the fact that our collective bargaining agreement expires in a year. Our union, which has a new executive director, has said they will not be ready to even begin negotiations until around the All-Star game. I think everybody needs to take a deep breath, and we'll worry about collective bargaining at some point in the future. No point in worrying about it now. My hope is that we can reason together and continue to build off of what we have.
How important is it that somebody as experienced as Don Fehr now occupies the other side of the bargaining table?
That could be a good thing, or it could be a bad thing. I don't know. Time will tell. I've known Don for a long period of time, seriously. He's obviously very smart. We've been spending time together and building a relationship that's more than just acquaintances, and I hope that will serve us well when we get to the point in time when we can really have substantive discussions.
I'm not surprised the commissioner would rather not talk about labor, but I'm dead certain it's already on his mind. You know how far ahead this guy thinks? He bargained to postpone the expiration date of his CBA until after those of the NFL and NBA, ensuring that his players and owners would learn from other league successes and mistakes. He's strategic, he's creative, and he'll need to be when it's finally time to sit down with Donald Fehr and carve out a deal that's in the best interests of the sport. Here's hoping it goes more smoothly than last time. Many thanks to Mike Richter and Peter Luco for joining us, and thank you for watching. We'll see you next week on Sportfolio.